Greetings, my fellow freedom-loving sovereign thinkers. This is L3 Views Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date is Friday, September 29th, 2017. Yeah, so I'm just checking back at the Broward County Main Library, for Andrews Avenue 100 block. I'm in the lobby, just lounging out. Terribly, they got rid of the chairs, so I have something about how this little coat to lean back on. Yeah, so just you're seeing the whole song and dance and pulling the blame game. What's going on in the island of Puerto Rico? Our brothers and sisters got caught in the governmental bureaucracy, government dependency program. Sometimes there's lessons you gotta learn from. You always got to be ready, prepare yourselves at the best of your ability. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor or in between. I'm not saying it's all that simple. This is what team effort's about. I know there are cases of people are playing marauders out there, and that's dead wrong. Those are garbage, ungrateful individuals. The criminal elements in that island, but the rest of the people there are amazing. And I want to thank Donald Trump for this. Hey, I'm critical of him too, but please. The hot potato game is done. To be very sincere, the Jones Act needs to be lifted. And I'm going to have to look at that one and talk about it on my episodes in the upcoming future. Well, one thing we know for sure, a lot of stuff is happening around the world, including the volcanoes. A couple of volcanoes along Indonesia. Just learned about Indonesia has been has the most active volcanoes in the world. We're off the Pacific Ocean along the Ring of Fire. And the Catalonia's independence referendum is going to be this Sunday. And of course, they're Spain's pulling the old Franco ideology move. Arrest, throw people in prison, arrest people, shut it down. Well, like I said before, Catalonia's got to get out. If they decide to leave Spain, secede, fine. I know the European Union don't like it because it's part of the Club of Rome battle. This is what you're seeing right now, like what happened in Britain, seceding from the European Union. The same thing is going on with Catalonia and other cities and states around the world on secession. Even Venice is talking about separation as well. Quebec, Canada, Quebec wants to secede from the Canadian Federation. It's just examples of what's going to really happen. But I have to say, with these individuals, there's always going to be a chance. And can it be done? Yes. It's going to take some time? Absolutely. Things don't happen overnight. Hopefully, there won't be any bloodshed in Catalonia. A lot of history in that place, man. And so some people may not like it. Hey, you know what? That's how it goes. It's up to the people in that region, or state, or province, whatever we're going to call it, to have their voice. And if they do separate, like the Spanish Parliament need to work together on trades and all that and have an honorable diplomacy. Gandhi, when India separated from Britain, Mahatma Gandhi, he has his flaws too, don't get me wrong. But he did say Britain's not our enemy. We just have disagreements and they still want to be on honorable terms. We're going to hope for the best for the Korean region as well, based on their battles, civil wars, and of course the conflict that the United Nations got involved and left 30% of the population of that state, of that country, gone, left them in rubble. I know it's true, I did talk about South Korea and want to do a humanitarian. That's great. Leave it alone. Let them iron this out. It's been going on for almost near 70 years. So there's bigger things that needs to be done. Alright, so enough of my little rant. There's so much I can say about me digressing. I admit that I have those moments too. And yeah, I'll just check in a couple of topics. I got some topics here I'm going to check out. This one came out yesterday from Natural News, and it says here, dairy industry giant caught harboring over 100 illegal aliens, denying jobs to U.S. workers. By Russell Davis. It's a Michigan-based dairy farmer, Denise Burke, filed a guilty plea for harboring more than 100 illegal immigrants and is to settle $1.38 million in penalties to the federal government. Burke, an Irish immigrant himself, owns and operates both a Dunganstown Dairy and Parisville dairy farms located in the Michigan Thumb region. That's like, Detroit and all those areas. The dairy farmer agreed to sign a plea agreement, admitting that he did not seek legal permission to employ more than 100 legal immigrants that worked in his 2 farms. Burke gave the legal aliens free housing on or next to his farms. So-called illegal aliens would be rarely available for work and less accessible to immigration authorities. By keeping the illegal workers on his farms and his farms in operation, Burke benefited financially and gained a commercial advantage over the dairy farmers who employed only legal workers. Burke's plea agreement read. The plea agreement also stated that illegal immigrants' lack of valid documentation hindered them from obtaining driver's licenses and registered vehicles with the state, Michigan Secretary of State. Likewise, the illegal immigrant status prevented them from opening financial accounts to cash paychecks themselves. This is a classic case of harboring illegal aliens and must not be tolerated, especially on such a scale. Not only is it unfair to Americans and legal immigrants who might have needed those jobs, it is likely that the illegal workers were exploited. Cases like these illustrate the need for a mandate for all employers to use E-Verify to prevent egregious illegal hiring like this, and so that law-abiding employers don't face unfair competition. In addition, more Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, efforts to investigate these rogue employers should be supported with the funding from Congress. Jessica Vaughn, Director of Policy Studies for the Case of Immigration Studies, told Zeti Online. Data from the Pew Research Center revealed that there were 11 million unauthorized immigrants in the United States in 2015, which equated to a 3.4% of the total U.S. population. The center also found that there were 5.4 million Mexican unauthorized immigrants and 5.7 non-Mexican illegal immigrants living in the country in 2015 and 2016. Furthermore, Pew data showed that the U.S. civilian workforce included up to 8 million illegal immigrants. The specifics of Burke's legal dilemma. Burke could face with a verdict of 35 months in prison when he is sentenced on January 4th. His wife, Madeline, has also pleaded guilty to 1 count of hiring employees without checking their eligibility to work in the United States. The Burkes and their farms are slated to settle a total of $1.38 million for the crimes likewise. Burke is to pay $187,000 in fines, while his wife agreed to pay a penalty of $3,000. Aside from the Burkes, another person of interest by the name of Yolanda Stewart has also been implicated in the legal dispute. According to reports, a police officer caught Stewart red-handed as she ferried 5 of Burke's illegal immigrants in her car in 2013. Also was reported that Yolanda admitted to plotting with the Burkes and other farms in the area to help illegal immigrants in purchasing their groceries, cashing their checks, and remitting some of the money back to Mexico. The biggest consideration here is sending the message to other employers that ICE is paying attention and will change the behavior of employers. When employers' behaviors change, then the behavior of people who are contemplating coming to the United States illegally will change also, said Ira, media director for the Federation for American Immigration Reform. There's plenty of other information here as well you can look at. And that's one of the most interesting things I see. And this doesn't matter how you look at it, because some folks will say, yeah, they're trespassing, they're invaders. And it's not just going after immigration as a whole. Remember, a lot of them who are legal immigrants didn't get the opportunity to work in the farms. Something you always have to question. And a lot of areas, like great amount of them that are in Mexico, yeah, a lot of stuff was happening, fascism and people being oppressed down there as well. So, very intriguing indeed. And for these folks here, remember, it's not just one particular group that are unauthorized immigrants or illegal. Many of them, too, are from other parts of the world. Don't be surprised if a bunch of them were blonde hair, blue eyes, white Anglo-Saxon chaps. They can't use the race card. Can't say racism or anything like that. It's just an ethical stance. Because I know many of them, too, that are Hispanic and Central American and Mexican descent who came here legitimately and so forth, actually are pissed or ticked off on what's going on, because they support, you got folks out there are ethical, and they don't want to see any exemptions, regardless. So, and another thing we have to look at too, the Club of Rome agenda. This is what's harboring it. Truth of the matter is, some of these folks are a little bit green, but remember, immigration, illegal immigration is happening worldwide, even in Mexico, happening everywhere. But it's just maybe a small amount, but and they can be bigger. And these other folks have opportunities to help themselves and all that. Because I know a lot of them did probably have families down there. Put your work up down there, and that's a shame too. So you have to look at everything across the board. I said this: give them the Bill of Rights in Spanish and share it down there with them. Hey. Or start separating from Mexico. That'd be a great start, man. It's a great statehood for their own, create independence and secession from the Federation of Mexico, because, hey, to be very frank, there's too much corruption over there, and Mexico City is not really giving them a hand in a lot of areas. But there's just an example of government, of what government's all about. So speaking of that, there's another one that happened over here as well. Came out yesterday by the Department of Justice. Office of Public Affairs, Justice Department files lawsuit against crop production services alleging discrimination against U.S. workers. The Department of Justice announced today that it had filed a lawsuit against Crop Production Service, Inc., or crop production headquartered in Loveland, Colorado, for allegedly discriminating against U.S. workers in violation of the Immigration and Nationality Act. The complaint alleges that in 2016, crop production discriminated against at least 3 U.S. citizens by refusing to employ them as seasonal technicians in El Campo, Texas, because crop production preferred to hire temporary foreign workers under the H-2A visa program. According to the department's complaint, crop production imposed more burdensome requirements on U.S. citizens than it did on H-2A workers to discourage U.S. citizens from working at the facility. For instance, the complaint alleges that whereas U.S. citizens had to complete a background check and a drug test before being permitted to start work, H-2A workers were allowed to begin working without completing them. In some cases, never completed them. The complaint also alleges that crop production refused to consider a limited English proficient U.S. citizen for employment, but hire H-2A workers who could not speak English. Ultimately, all the crop production, 15 available seasonal technicians jobs in 2016 went to H-2A workers instead of U.S. workers. Under the INA, it is unlawful for employers to intentionally discriminate against workers who have their citizenship status or to otherwise favor the employment of temporary foreign workers available. Interesting. Workers, because of their citizenship status, otherwise favor the employment of temporary foreign workers over available qualified U.S. workers. In addition, the H-2A visa program requires employers to recruit and hire available qualified U.S. workers before hiring temporary foreign workers. In the spirit of President Trump's executive order on Buy American, Hire American, the Department of Justice will not tolerate employers who discriminate against U.S. workers because of the desire to hire temporary foreign visa holders, said Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Justice Departments will enforce the Immigration Nationality Act in order to protect U.S. workers, as they are the very backbone of our communities and our economy. Where there is a job available, U.S. workers should have a chance at it before bringing in workers from abroad. The United States complaint seeks back pay on behalf of the workers, civil penalties, and other redeemable relief to correct and prevent discrimination. The workers have also filed their own private lawsuit and are represented by the Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. Both suits were filed in the Office of the Chief Administrative Hearing Officer, a specialized administrative court that Congress created to resolve such claims. The division's Immigrant and Employees' Rights Section, IER, formerly known as the Office of Special Counsel for Immigration-Related Unfair Employment Practices, is responsible for enforcing the anti-discrimination provision of the INA. The state prohibits, among other things, citizenship status and national origin discrimination in hiring, firing, or recruitment or referral for a fee, unfair documentary practices, retaliation, and intimidation. The case is part of the Division's Protecting U.S. Workers Initiative, an initiative aimed at targeting, investigating, and bringing enforcement actions against companies that discriminate against U.S. workers in favor of foreign visa workers. Interesting there. So they have a free webinar and all that, and you can call them up for more information about protections against employment discrimination under immigration laws. Call IER's Workers Hotline at 1-800-255-7688 or TTY with 1-800-237-2515. That's for the hearing impaired. Call IER's Employment Hotline at 1-800-255-8155 or for 1-800-237-2515. TTY for hearing impaired. Sign up for a free webinar. Email IER@usdoj.gov or gov, or visit IER's English and Spanish websites. Applicants or employees who believe they were subjected to a different documentary requirement based on their citizenship, immigration status, or national origin, or discrimination based on their citizenship, immigration status, or national origin, and hiring, firing, recruitment, or referral should contact IER's Workers Hotline for assistance. So there's a couple of attachments on the complaint as well. So yeah, like I said, so some people may like it, some others don't. But sometimes the open free market, so there'd be some type of form of mercantilism as well. But the fact is this: people should take care of the local folks and all that. That's how you build a relationship. Don't get all these outsiders all the time, regardless of who they are. Then hire them if it's necessary. So right here, it should always do that first. Then you build relationships, plus you get a solid reputation. That's the one way you can really resolve these areas. And this is something else on discrimination and so forth. Yeah, worker discrimination. So it's gonna bite you in the butt when you least expect it, but hey, build relationships with your communities, alright? That's talking about these companies. Alright, well, next one here came from Natural Blaze, came out today, to be believe it or not. FEMA director urges Americans to develop a true culture of preparedness, but no one is listening. I don't know, you haven't talked to me about it, right? Daisy Luther. It looks like preppers aren't that crazy after all. FEMA's new director, Brock Long, has reportedly said that Americans don't have a culture of preparedness, something that is much needed with the start uptick in natural disasters. Long has only been the director of FEMA since January 20th this year and already has to deal with a historic number of disasters in this short period of time. It appears that Mr. Long has a mindset of self-reliance based on a couple of recent statements he made to the media. but the MSN or mainstream media doesn't seem to interest in his ideas about fostering a culture of preparedness despite the practicality and essential nature of his suggestion. In the first interview from September 11th that I personally only heard about yesterday, FEMA's new director, Rock Long, spoke with journalists to discuss the response of Hurricane Irma. In an interview, he's had some things that vindicate all of us who have spent time and money working toward being prepared. He said this quote here, "I think we have a long way to create a true culture of preparedness within our citizenry in America. No American, no citizen, no visitor to this country is immune to disaster. And we have a long way to go to get people to understand the hazards based on where they dwell, where they work, and how to be prepared financially, and how to be prepared for insurance, how to have continuity of operation plans for the businesses so that we can avoid the suffering and strife and loss of life. It's truly disappointing that people won't heed warnings." Straight out of the favorite prepper's book, right? Handbook, right? Of course, the reporter quickly shifted from an actual useful information to start asking about climate change. For some reason, he felt this was far more essential than practical advice Mr. Long was offering. You can watch the interview below. Some of those numbers were shocking. FEMA is spending $200 million a day in relief efforts and desperately needed help has hardly even begun for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. In a more recent statement, Mr. Long re-emphasized the need to be prepared and to start kids off young with this mindset. I think that the last 35 days or so have been a gut check for Americans that we don't have a true culture of preparedness in this country, and we got a lot of work to do. Whatever it is in education and being ready, it's not saying, hey, have 3 days worth of supplies ready to go. It's greater than that. And also, people have the finances and the savings able to overcome simple emergencies. We have to hit the reset button and create a true culture of preparedness starting at a very young age and filtering all the way up. And here's a video on here as well, so you can see it yourself. There's a couple of video links on here. We in the preparedness community have been saying this for ages. Mr. Long, but thank you for attempting to put this front and center. I have to agree on that. I'm not a big fan of FEMA either, okay? So one thing that is different about Long's approach is practicality. Many government officials seem to forget that about the financial end of emergencies. They can't seem to wrap their brains around the fact while they have $200 million a day, most folks do not. That's why financial preparedness is such a massive importance. If you have to live away from home without access to a kitchen, the expenses will rack up pretty quickly as well. Think about how thinly those millions are spread. FEMA is eventually going to run out of money. As well, think about how thinly those millions are spread. One person I know who lost his rental home will receive $4,000. This has to replace everything she owns: furniture, clothing, personal items, food, cleaning products. You get the idea. Plus pay the first and last month's rent for a new apartment. People without flood insurance who lost their home will be eligible for a maximum of only $21,000. But if their property wasn't paid off, they still owe mortgage payments on a place that is uninhabitable. Don't forget that FEMA is providing those displaced by more than 2 acres of wildfires throughout the U.S. Although initially they turned down a request for assistance, they reconsidered. When you look at the true cost of disasters on this scale, it's hard to imagine that FEMA will have enough money should these emergencies continue, or even though cover our current tab. There were reports that FEMA had run out of money shortly after Hurricane Harvey, but more appeared for Hurricane Irma. One article reluctantly suggested that FEMA can never run out of money because Congress will just vote to give them more when addressing concerns that FEMA was down to its last $1 billion. But the U.S. Congress quickly put such worries to rest on September 8, 2017 by hastily passing legislation that gave DRF infusion for cash. The emergency supplemental appropriations of $7.4 billion allow FEMA to continue to fully focus on ongoing preparation, response, and recovery needs, said an agency spokesperson via email. While legislators may have cut a bit close, but there was little chance that FEMA actually will run out of cash. According to a Congressional Research Service analysis, Congress made 14 supplemental appropriations to the fund between 2004 and 2013 for a total of $89.6 billion. In alone, 1 year alone, 2005, that year, the Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans and other areas of the Gulf Coast. Legislators bolstered the fund with 3 extra appropriations amounting to $43 billion. This, of course, naively assumed that there will always be more money to give to FEMA. Eventually, we're going to run out. Interesting there. Let's go right here. Is this the reason for the slow response to Puerto Rico? First, I keep wondering if the lack of money is the reason for the slow response to the desperate situation in Puerto Rico. Add to this is the logistical problems, and you have a recipe for chaos. Another thing to keep in mind about Puerto Rico is that this one of the rare situations in which stockpile preparedness may not have done only any good, while some folks like to say that Puerto Ricans shouldn't be out of food within 6 days after disaster. What they aren't considering is the totality of the destruction. What food people may have stored was destroyed at homes and returned into piles of rubble. Other food spoiled soon after the power for the entire island was taken out. If you look at these photos, you will understand why few people have food. You can look at the photos yourself. Imagine such a situation. My own carefully preserved jars of food would have been smashed to bits, and my freeze-dried food would have been soaked in the flooded waters. In most situations, your stockpile will see you through. But in disasters of this magnitude, even most people, well-prepared persons, could be left with nothing. It's always how to store your stuff. That's what this thing is addressing. Maybe money is why the director is urging a culture for preparedness. Perhaps this reality is why Mr. Long is so adamant that Americans need to get prepared to take care of themselves, and that we need to raise our children to understand this too. That's not a warm, fuzzy thing that people who refuse to prepare want to hear. So the mainstream media gives his advice little attention. If you're interested in being better prepared, be sure to sign up for this daily newsletter. A culture of preparedness is indeed the answer, and preppers have known this for a very long time. And I do have to agree with them, this person, completely. Like I say, you gotta be ready all the time. And like I said, we all have our falters. I'm not saying that people in Puerto Rico were unprepared, but things do occur, so you have to always see things, try to think multiple steps ahead. That will be the answer. And because one day FEMA might get disbarred, disowned, and all that. So this is why you always got to see things a lot more than meets the eye. Because I remember Andrew giving those brothers and sisters a hand down there 25 years ago. And this is an island, totally different realm. One thing for sure, do what's best and stick together. Not just play survival of the fittest. It's not going to fly. I'll be back in a little bit, so stay tuned. Cool. So, enough of that. We're going to hit this next one here. Yeah, this is interesting. This is from Thornberger's blog. From the Future of Freedom Foundation, FFF.org. And this is interesting. It says here, Cuban doctors are teaching us about U.S. slavery. Cuban doctors working in Brazil. This came out today, by the way. Cuban doctors working in Brazil have just put the American left, including self-proclaimed socialist Bernie Sanders, in a very awkward position. According to an article in today's New York Times, the doctors filed suit in Brazil complaining of their enslavement by their own government, the Cuban government, as part of Cuba's single-payer, socialist, one-size-fits-all healthcare system. Yes, the same healthcare system that the American left has praised and glorified for more than 50 years. And you love to see installed here in the United States, like given Medicare, Medicaid, and Obamacare have turned out to be such a disaster. Slavery? I thought slavery had been abolished all over the world. Those Cuban doctors are talking about tax slavery, a principle that all too many Americans unfortunately just don't get. Let's take the classic example of slavery, like that which existed in the South. Black men and women were owned by plantation owners. And they got a lot of slaves up north as well, but we'll just go on here. They were forced to work for the owners. Slaves were not paid any wage or salary for their labor, but were provided free housing, free health care, and free food. Slaves had no choice in the matter. They had to stay working on the plantation whether they wanted it to or not. Let's assume that the plantation owner treated a slave really well, giving him a really nice cottage in which to live, providing him an excellent diet, and giving him first-class medical care. Let's even go a step further and say that the plantation owner gave the slave money a allowance. Would that change the situation? Would the slave no longer be a slave? Of course he would. That's because he wouldn't have a choice. His economic condition would be better than that of other slaves, but he still would be a slave. Let's assume that the federal government today sees an American and said, from now on you're going to work with us full time. We will provide you with free food, free housing, and free health care. Would that be any different from slavery in the Old South? Some people will say yes, Jacob, because when the government does it, that's different from when the plantation owner does it. That's obviously ridiculous. Slavery is slavery, regardless of whether the enslaver is a government or a private entity. In fact, throughout history, governments have been a primer enslavers of people. What if the government provides the person with an allowance? Does that change the situation? No, because that person isn't free to walk away. It's no different than if a plantation owner had paid an allowance to a slave. Are there modern day instances of where governments enslave people? Of course. That's what conscription or the draft does. It empowers the government to forcibly seize people and force them to work and kill for the government in return for free housing, free food, free health care, and an allowance. So where does the Cuban doctors fit into all this? Under Cuba's much vaunted healthcare system, doctors are required to work for the government. In return, the government gives them an allowance. At the same time, everyone in Cuba gets free health care. It's in their constitution, so read that when you have a chance. I might just put that in there, folks, so you can really read this. What's not to like, right? Just free health care, just like free education, free food, and free housing under Cuba's socialist system. That's why American liberals have long extolled Cuba's socialist system, because everything is free. Well, apparently those Cuban doctors working in Brazil aren't too happy with an arrangement. You see, they are excited to go to Brazil because they will be receiving a $1,400 a month compared to $30 a month. Yes, 30. That the Cuban government pays doctors working in Cuba. But then those Cuban doctors working in Brazil learned that the Brazilian government is actually paying the Cuban government $3,620 a month per doctor. Imagine that. Cuban doctors are doing all the work, but the government is receiving most of the money. Talk about exploitation. That's why those Cuban doctors are suing. As one of the sung doctors put it, there comes a time when you get tired of being a slave. His statement was ratified by a Brazilian judge who called the arrangement a form of slave labor. But can't you already hear Bernie Sanders and other American leftists calling those Cuban doctors greedy, selfish, uncaring, capitalist swine who hate the poor, needy, and disadvantaged? Maybe, just maybe, those Cuban doctors will induce more Americans to recognize their own plight as tax slaves. As our American ancestors understood, freedom entails, at a minimum, a right to keep everything you earn and to decide what to do with it. That's why there was no taxation on income for more than 125 years in the United States. People were free to keep 100% of their money, of their earnings, and there was nothing the government could do about it. The system made the individual American banking sovereign and the government subservient. Then in 1916, the federal government adopted the federal income tax law, which made everyone's income subject to being seized by the government. The new system completely inverted the relationship between the American people and the government, making the government the sovereign and the citizen the serf. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? Sometimes the government is nice to take less. Sometimes it's not nice to take more. But the amount is taken is beside the point. The real point is that whatever the government permits people to keep is essentially their allowance. No different in the principle from the allowance that the Cuban government permits its doctors to keep. The words of Johann Goethe sum it up the plight of the American people. None are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. That's why what makes many Americans more enslaved than those Cuban doctors. Very interesting indeed. You know what? I am gonna get the Cuban Constitution in here as well from constituteproject.org. Very good site, my friends. You should check it out. You can learn about the laws and a lot of good stuff. So this is why, my friends, when it comes to government, they're not your friends. Whatever, they're charming where it can attract you. They said, I'm going to screw you so bad, but you're going to love me for it, for your own good. So, hey, some people may not like it. Too bad, but the truth hurts, doesn't it? So, I'm just getting a big kick out of this, man. That's why I tell everyone, no matter what your views are, you never trust the government. Government in Latin means control of the mind. So I'm definitely going to add the Cuban Constitution on here from constituteproject.org. Fantastic site, by the way. And it is done. Hey! We're going to put that in there on the Cuban Constitution. You can read it yourselves. You can see it for yourselves and observe responsibly, okay? Remember, Cuba, they support freedom of expression, but if you criticize the government, they can throw your behinds in jail because it's considered hate. So, freedom of speech and expression under the socialist society. Can't be critical, that's considered obscene. Alright, one more thing about government. This came out yesterday by Aaron Kazel, originally from Activist Post. I post some stuff on there. On stuff pertaining to the government and the NFL on my Facebook page, Twitter, Google+. But it's a good article. It came out yesterday. It says here, government versus NFL. Organization may be forced to return patriotism funds again. And as it reads here, amid kneeling protests to the national anthem, the NFL may be forced to return taxpayers' funds. Representative Mo Brooks, Republican from Alabama, on Tuesday called an end to all federal government support of the NFL. I believe you all to terminate all federal government support of the NFL, Brooks told Breitbart News. Look at that. For September 11th, I'm a slave, I want to be free. As long as I got my football, I'll be okay. I'm sorry, I just find this totally hysterical. That would include the termination of any and all advertising done on behalf of the federal government, military, non-military, to the extent we do any. Same thing with another sport that insults our country and our flag and our anthem, as the NFL has done, he added. Yeah, but when it comes to pluralism, telling countries what to do, foreign aid to nations that hate our guts, that's exceptional. That is real American. That is true patriotism, and be proud of our flag. God bless the empire, the New World Order. Right, Representative Brooks? Something to think about. The NFL reportedly received billions of dollars of subsidies from local taxpayers and governments, CNN reported in 2015. Another 2015 report from NJ.com revealed that more than a dozen NFL teams received money from the Defense Department between 2011 and 2014 in exchange for promoting the military during games and other forms of advertisements. Yeah, God bless the empire. Invade Afghanistan, attack Iraq, attack other countries in the name of patriotism. Yes. Protests started last year, a way highlight of racial inequality in America, fight back against police brutality. Isn't the first time the organization would be forced to return funds for paid patriotism. Yes, blackmailing is good for us. That's okay by me. Gotta grab something here. Boom, boom. In 2016, the Professional Football League was forced to agree to return $723,734 that was paid by the Defense Department to honor the military. In a letter, the two Arizona senators, the NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, said in an audit uncovered that the course of 4 seasons, $723,734 had been mistakenly applied to appreciation activities rather than recruitment efforts. McCain and Flake, who released a letter demanding the NFL pay back taxpayers' funds, previously issued a report in November that the year criticizing the NFL and other sports organizations for tax-paying money, put an end at the games honoring the troops and practice they call pay patriotism. That report that the Pentagon had inappropriately paid up to $6.8 million to both professional and college sports teams. CBS report. So you got Tweedledee and Tweedledum, McCain and Flake complaining about it, want the money back. Now look at these clowns you got in Congress, folks. Come on, that's the people we should be real angry about, not some goonheads kneeling down. All right, this is why it's bigger than what it is. All right, the total paid out for patriotic displays at sporting events was much more outrageous. $53 million in spending on marketing and advertising contracts, SB Nation reported. Flake was pleased with the NFL's response, returning money we called egregious federal spending. Oh, yeah, Mr. Flake. Yeah, flaky one. All right, well, I'll go on here. In all years I spent rooting for egregious federal spending, the NFL is the first organization to perform due diligence, take responsibility, and return funds to the taxpayers, Flake said. The NFL's response to this investigation sets a new standard that only strengthens its reputation as a supporter of military service and members and veterans. Yeah, when it comes to the one world order, bending over and using that for defense, $36 billion a month, under $36 billion a month, to foreign countries and military contracts, that's okay. That's the American way. Back in being a true patriot and love your country. And of course, we got the Federals of Bob. McCain equally praised the NFL for giving back taxpayers funds, tweeting that he applauded an effort. I applaud NFL for returning tax dollars used to honor our troops in time for other leagues to do the same. Yeah, you know what, Insane McCain? You're nothing more than a treasonous piece of garbage that makes Benedict Arnold more of a man than you ever be. Okay? That's how I look at you. Buffoon. Groomed buffoon. According to the report, McCain and Flake, this was supposed to be addressed with the NDAA in 2016. We have successfully had the 2016 NDAA National Defense Authorization Act amended to restrict DoD spending on paid patriotism in its professional sports advertising contracts. So this raises the question about what the other federal funding from taxpayers the NFL is receiving besides money from the Pentagon for patriotic displays, which again is supposed to be discontinued as mandated by law. Before 2009, the NFL players didn't even stand for the national anthem. It was a marketing strategy to push military recruitment. But then the Department of Defense and the National Guard got involved. They began to pay the NFL millions of dollars to have flag ceremonies before the game and have players on the field. ESPN and Stephen A. Smith covered this issue on ESPN's First Take in 2016 when players first began recent on-field protest trend. As part of the new relationship between the DoD and the National Guard, the NFL changed its practices and began bringing players on field during playing the national anthem for some inspiring displays of heartfelt patriotism. The outrage over yesterday's widespread refusal to continue the practice is proof positive that the DoD's marketing dollars hit their mark. Patriots who never noticed the change in 2000 have been suddenly driven to a frenzy over players' refusal to continue being used as props in the NFL's high-priced performance of America. You can watch the video yourself. It's very interesting, which I'm not surprised at all. Even paid Senate Armed Services Committee war porn poster boy leader John McCain has admitted the practice is wrong. Given the immense sacrifices made by our service members, it seems more appropriate that any organization with a genuine interest in honoring them by delivering public credit as a result should do so at its own expense and not at that of the American taxpayer. Americans deserve the ability to assume that tributes for our men and women in military uniform are generally a display of national pride, which many are, rather than taxpayer-funded DoD marketing gimmicks. In 2015, Senator McCain and the Senate Oversight Committee issued a statement along with a corresponding report not condemning the practice of paid patriotism as charades conducted not out of the sense of patriotism but rather done for profit in the form of millions in taxpayers' dollars going from the Department of Defense to wealthy pro-sport franchises. The report continued to detail its findings. Unfortunately, the contrary to the public statement made by the DoD and the NFL, the majority of the contracts, 72 of 122 contracts we analyzed, clearly showed that the DoD paid for patriotic tributes at professional football, baseball, basketball, hockey, and soccer games. These paid tributes included on-field color guard enlistment and re-enlistment ceremonies, performance of the national anthem, full field flag detail, ceremony of first pitches, and puck drops. National Guard paid teams for the opportunity to sponsor Military Appreciation Night and to recognize his birthday. It paid the Buffalo Bills to sponsor to salute the service game. DoD even paid teams for the opportunity to perform surprise welcome promotions for troops returning for deployments and would recognize wounded warriors. NFL spokesman Brian McCarthy later confirmed that players did not appear on the field for the anthem until 2009. The controversial topic was briefly discussed on NBC this week when NFL player Marvin Watson mentioned the financial relationship between the DoD and the NFL. Sorry about that. Civil rights activist Jesse Williams also expressed the paid patriotism in an MSNBC interview this week, calling the national anthem a scam. It is not actually part of football. This was invented in 2009 from the government paying the NFL to market military recruitment to get more people to go off and fight wars to die, Williams said. This has nothing to do with the NFL or American pastime tradition. This is to get the boys and girls to go to fly overseas to kill people. They're marketing, they're pumping millions and millions of dollars into the NFL to get us to put on a pageant in front of the NFL football games to get you to go off and fight. And he is right. And this is why I get really observant in these areas. But now all this is coming out. I'll be very sincere. I've worked these Super Bowls, okay? So I can tell you, I see how these people get treated. Patted down, all these detection machines and all that. To go to a game, say, I'm convicted of watching a football game. That's just a fine example, my friend. It's unpatriotic to be a slave. It's unpatriotic to defy. I'm getting pat down. Okay, master, I want to cut my football game and all that. I'll be okay. But the kneel, now everyone's up in arms. It should have been calling these folks out a long time ago. But you know what? That's why if you think one-dimensionally, you gotta get duped. So, hey, as far as I'm concerned, all these people in Congress, including McCain, CFR stooge, New World Order asset, yeah, he called himself all this hypocrisy he talks. You should just give him a penile microphone. Talk on that, you old fart. I'm sorry, but I get a little bit annoyed when I hear talking about John McCain, how much of a maverick he is. Give me a break. His time will come. And I'm not wishing him any ill, but his actions are backfiring. He will be exposed. And to the rest of the people in the NFL, I can tell you this: do what's right. And I know you perform entertainment. A lot of guys get hurt. 4.5 seasons. An average NFL football player's career is 4.5 seasons. And these folks do get hurt really bad in a period of time. But when I see stuff like this, I find it unacceptable. This is more of a blackmailing game, and now it's backfiring. It's one of those areas, like I tell my friends about this. Sports is entertainment. They need us more we need them. Period. Done. And that's it. Alright, my friends, I am done for this episode. I thank everyone for listening, but feel free to download and share throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you send me something that's interesting you may want to check out, whatever you do, please address the correspondence with the corner. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Breaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Scene.life, Minds.com, FutureNet.club, or Patreon.com/LookingForLuck3 with 3 eyes. Or you can hit me on Gab, gab.ai. In addition, you can email me at lookingluck3@gmail.com, or to encrypted ones, lookingluck03@protonmail.com. Alright, my friends, once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. May your guardian spirits be with you.